Good morning. Today we're going to cover resolving disagreements within the special education process. Some participant outcomes. Participants will understand options that they have for resolving disagreements, as well as learning the difference between the options for resolving formal disagreements and informal disagreements.
So there are informal and formal ways to resolve disagreements at the IEP team table. Within Prince George's County Public Schools, the first way is, and I think Marla mentioned this in her presentation, is always to contact your IEP team. If there's something you don't understand, if there's something you don't agree with, anything like that. And your next step is your Family Support Center. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about the support of special education instructional specialists from our K-12 office and then our compliance office as well. And then towards the end, we'll get into the more formal dispute resolution options, what those look like, and kind of who initiates that and what the process is. So your first stop is always the IEP team. And we really wanted to make 3 points. Number one, that you are a member of that IEP team. You're probably, outside of the student, the most important member of that IEP team. And our job is to assist you in empowering you to help in that decision-making process. Our mission is to make reasonable efforts to make sure you understand and are able to informatively participate in group decisions related to special education for your student. And part of that is providing interpreters for parents or guardians who are either deaf or hard of hearing or whose native language is not English. Our teams are well versed in how to request those interpreters. So if there's something that you need at the IEP team table, whether it be an interpreter or someone who can interpret English-wise, interpret like results of evaluations and things like that, the first place that you would go is your IEP team and your IEP chairperson or facilitator at your child's school. So we're the Family Support Center, and our mission is to help, number one, resolve concerns, to answer any questions you may have regarding special education. We have a lending library that has all information about different types of disabilities, sibling support, all of those things. But part of what we also do is help enable you to become the most effective participant in the IEP team. So sometimes that looks like consulting with you when you receive the draft of the IEP 5 days prior to say, hey, maybe there's a question you have here. Hey, maybe you told me your child has difficulty with that, but I don't see that reflected here. Another piece of what we do is attend IEP meetings with parents because, like Marlo said, they can be emotional. And oftentimes it's overwhelming. You're trying to get everything done within the time period. You're trying to make sure that everything is covered. And we can be there to help you remember things that we discussed, to help facilitate communication between you and the IEP team. And so anything that you would need to support you through that IEP process can happen through the Family Support Center. Sometimes, and a lot of the time when we receive calls at the Family Support Center, it's not necessarily for just basic support. It's because something has happened or there's something that's misunderstood in the IEP or in the IEP process, and something that needs to be looked into on a more in-depth level. And so sometimes when concerns are brought to our attention at the Family Support Center, what we do is involve our special education instructional specialists, who are central office team members who support several schools at the central office level, and or staff from our compliance office, which support in making sure that IEP teams are complying with what the law is and what's happening in the classroom or in the process for the IEP. And oftentimes that looks like requesting staff from those offices to attend IEP meetings. So that's kind of the informal piece of dispute resolution. And I would say that 90% of the time it stops at that. People will come to our office, families will call us or email us, and we're able to kind of facilitate the communication between the parents and the schools, or between parents and our central office team members that support the schools. But sometimes you don't agree with what's happening at the IEP team table, or there are things that are happening that you think are out of compliance with the law or with school policy or things like that. And so there are some more formal ways to resolve disagreements. And Marlo mentioned some of these, and she had the chart with light blue and dark blue, and which are kind of that continuum. And so the first one is mediation, and it's similar. I'm sure you've all heard of mediation in court cases. It's similar to that. It is a process that can be used to resolve disagreements between families of children with disabilities and PGCPS. It is presided over by an employee of the Office of Administrative Hearings who is qualified and trained in effective mediation techniques. It is at no cost to the parent or the school district. And we will provide these slides at the end, but there is contact information here. It is voluntary. No one is mandated to go through mediation. It can be used at any time to resolve disagreements under Part B, which is the school age part of IDEA. And it includes sometimes things that come up prior to a parent or a family filing or a school system filing due process. And the nice thing about mediation is it can be requested by you as a family, or it can be requested by PGCPS. If during a team meeting that a family disagrees with the IEP or the services, school teams are required to provide you with both an oral and written explanation of your right to request mediation, the contact information you saw on that last slide, and also information about free or other low-cost legal and related services available in the area. And a little later in the presentation, we'll show you where you can find those on our special education website. We talked about the Office of Administrative Hearings. That person is qualified and trained in mediation. The Office of Administrative Hearings is not part of MSTE. They have a list of qualified employees who have no conflicts of interests. They're not part of MSTE. They're not part of us as the LEA or the local education agency. And they are selected to be impartial to conduct the mediation. And then there's a link on this slide of how to file for a request as well. You can also choose due process. Due process is a more formal complaint, and it surrounds identification, evaluation, placement, or least restrictive environment, or anything revolving around free and appropriate public education or FAPE. And the parent and the school involved in this dispute have an opportunity for a formal, impartial hearing when you file a due process complaint. When you file those complaints, our responsibility as a public education is, again, to provide you with free or low-cost legal in the area or any other relevant services. Like any IEP meeting, we have a responsibility to provide you with a copy of the procedural safeguards. And then we also have a responsibility to inform you that there is the possibility of mediation should you choose to request it. And finally, as part of our process, as part of the legal resolution process, there is the state complaint. And so this really is if you feel that PGCPS has violated federal or state law or any regulation concerning special education, or we've not implemented what came out of a due process hearing decision, then you have a right to file the state complaint, and that is with the Maryland State Department of Education. And the information for filing a state complaint goes through the branch that actually supports us through family support, which is the Division of Complaint Investigation and Due Process. So a state complaint is exactly what it sounds like. It is a complaint, it is a written signed letter directed to MSDE, the Division of Early Intervention and Special Education Services, that alleges that the public agency responsible for education of a student with disabilities violated some part or some requirement of IDEA or any accompanying state and federal regulations. It can be filed on behalf of an individual student or on behalf of a group of students. And this is the really important part that I want to impart to you, because I know we just covered a ton of information, but this is all encompassed in your procedural rights and safeguards. There is a chart on page 28 of that information, and it kind of compares what these processes entail, who can initiate that process. There are time limits for some of these processes, what can happen, what issues can be resolved, what are timelines, not just for filing these processes, but to resolve the issues, and who resolves that issue, whether it be the mediator, the administrative law judge, the parent and the public agency, or the Maryland State Department of Education. And I want to take you here. This is our dispute resolution card here. And it puts the Maryland State Department of Education contact Family Support Service. Ken Hudock is the section chief there in the Division of Early Intervention and Special Education Services. And there are resources here for you for those formal dispute resolution and resolving disagreement processes that go anywhere from the state complaint procedures, Part B, which is school age, Part C, which is infants and toddlers, all the way down to a listing of free and low-cost assistance for legal representation. So let's return here. And I also want to show you some resources that are available as part of that dispute resolution process. I'm sure if you have a student in special education, you've all seen your procedural safeguards that are sent home with every IEP meeting. There is a brand new fantastic series from the Maryland State Department of Education, which is a new parental rights guide, which kind of takes the piece from the procedural safeguards and puts it in plainer language for parents and walks you through those processes. And then we also have a resolving disagreements flyer that is available that walks you through kind of the hierarchy that we took you through tonight, from the IEP team to the Family Support Center to the special education non-public instructional specialist or the special education instructional specialist, compliance, and then mediation, state complaint, and due process. And it has information on the side here of how to initiate those processes. Now, all that being said, we know that some of you are likely going to have very specific questions on resolving specific disagreements. So one of the things that we've done is created a Google form for us. Oops, let me try that again. For us to contact you, and I'll put that link in the chat. And there's also a QR code for you to contact us if you need us to reach out to you for support. And I see that Marlo has also put in the chat some state complaint toolkit on their website.